Good morning, New Life. Before we go into our weekly announcements, just a big thank you on behalf of the Missions Committee and the missions team that will be going to Colombia late in the fall. We just wanted to thank you for all your contributions during our last Sunday bake sale. We were able to raise over $3,000 that will go towards our missions project once we land in Colombia. So thank you from the bottom of our hearts, and we're looking forward to continue to work with you, bringing the gospel to the nations. God bless.
Good day, NLCC family. I wanted to take a few moments to speak to you about our community prayer walks that are coming up on July the 3rd. Each Wednesday throughout the summer, we are going to meet here at 6:30 p.m. and walk the surrounding area of our church for 1 hour. We will have prayer sheets or prayer guides to hand out, and you can take time to pray, to walk, to meditate, to ponder on the things of the Lord as we pray for our community that God's hand would move upon their lives. So please be here Wednesday, July the 3rd at 6:30, and make sure you wear some comfortable shoes. Also, I wanted to mention to you that beginning on Sunday, July the 7th at 10:30 a.m., we will be moving into a one-service format for July and August, ending on Labor Day Sunday in September. So please mark your calendars, mark your alarms, put it in your iPhone, your Android, whatever you have to do to be here at 10:30 for July and August. So please plan on being here. God bless you, and I look forward to seeing you on July the 7th.
For July and August, youth is moving to Wednesday nights starting at 7, and our summer kickoff is happening on Wednesday, July 10th, here at the church at 6:30 p.m. There's going to be a barbecue, there's going to be games, there's going to be activities. So all the youth, we want you to come on out and celebrate with us. And also for those that have recently graduated grade 5, you are also welcome to come. So we hope to see you there. Summer is here, and as the weather is getting warmer, one of the needs that has arisen in our community is that our local youth shelter needs cases of water and boxes of juice. So we're going to be having a water bottle and juice box drive. So please feel free to bring cases of water and boxes of juice so that we can deliver them to the youth shelter and to the youth that need it.
In lieu of our summer camp, we are offering a kids midweek program happening every Wednesday from July to August. It'll start at 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. starting July 10th. Cost is $20 per week or $80 for the month. We hope to see you there. This will run like a day camp, and we're super excited. You can register online through our QR code or visit us at our kids check-in desk. We just want to take this time to thank you, church, for giving. It's through your giving we're able to accomplish all that we are doing here at NLCC. We have multiple ways to give. You can give through e-transfer, through our credit or debit terminals, or you can give through PushPay or our drop boxes. And again, thank you so much for your faithfulness in giving.
I know who I am. I know who I am. I know who I am. I am yours. I am yours. I know who I am. I know who I am. I know who I am. I am yours. I am yours. You are mine. Jesus, you are mine.
Well, today we are pleased to have the McCraes with us. And Darren and Patty have been our dedicated missionaries serving in Colombia, where they and their team strategically disciple communities by empowering and training local churches and national missionaries. With a vision to reach out to children at risk and support diverse communities, Darren often leads evangelistic outreaches involving national and international volunteers in schools and shopping centers and parks. Their ministry focuses on expanding the horizons of church leaders, providing resources for growth, and planting new congregations. Together, he and his wife Patty, who specializes in child psychology and children's ministry, work to connect with people of all backgrounds, build churches, and support children's homes and schools. Darren, who is originally from London, Ontario, has been ministering in Colombia since 1995, bringing decades of experience and a deep commitment to transforming lives through the gospel. He's no stranger to New Life Community Church, as we provide financial, prayerful, and mission team support to the McRaes, and we will be going to Colombia later this year in October for a trip. So would you join me today in welcoming Darren McRae as he comes to share God's Word with us?
Wow, he just took away my entire introduction. Again, my name is Darren McRae. For those of you who maybe not met my family, this is my wife, Patty. Patty is Colombian, and we will, actually during the outreach team that's going to be with us in October from New Life, we will be celebrating 24 years of marriage. Now, somebody might ask me, well, what is the secret to 24 years of marriage? I said, a lot of study. See, my wife, as Pastor Darrell said, she's a teacher, and she studied for 4 years at university. And somebody might say, well, what's that got to do with 24 years of marriage? Well, yeah, but she had a double major. Her second major was child psychology. That's the secret with dealing with her husband for 24 years. I think it's only fitting that on Canada Day we're here talking about missions and what Canada has done in the world. And I have to confess, I'm really good at doing missions. Been doing it for 29 years. Be coming up to 30 next May 2nd. Not so good at preaching about it. But what we do, yes, but the why of missions, no. We need to do better. We need to do better about preaching about missions, because somebody, even here right now, might be waiting to hear the call. But also because the church really needs to understand the impact that it makes in the nations. And so this morning, I'm going to be sharing a little bit about the why of missions and some of the nuts and bolts. But before I do that, I want to just give you a quick 3-minute video that'll give you an idea a little better of what we're doing. I love sharing testimonies, and there's two kinds of testimonies. There are those kinds of testimonies where you share about your personal life, sometimes the things that can be even embarrassing. And a lot of folks don't like doing that. A lot of folks come from shame cultures, like in Colombia, and they don't want to share those stories because they feel, oh wow, I can't talk about my past. And yet, it is precisely where you most receive love, forgiveness, and hope for the future that you can share love, forgiveness, and hope for the future to everybody else around you. Revelations 12:11 says, they defeated the enemy by the word of their testimony. And there's so many of us that need to stop leaving our favorite sword back at home because we're afraid it's not shiny enough. And then there's the other kind of testimony, like just the stories that we just shared on that video. I love sharing them. I love showing the wonderful, amazing things that God does. Even having gone through some of the most difficult times in our lives in the last few years, God moves when we are willing to say, I will trust you and I will serve you. But when you hear a testimony, it means there is a need behind the testimony. And some needs never seem to have an answer. It's just one more thing on the list of needs. And listening to the needs of the world around us can be challenging. Even listening to the testimonies of what God has done to the answered needs can be the same. It can be challenging. And if I were to be honest, sometimes it can even be a little depressing. Now you might think, well, hold on, wait a minute, Darren. How is it that listening to a testimony can be depressing? I can understand the needs, but how does listening to the testimony get you down? Well, sometimes just not being able to participate or thinking that we can't participate in the testimony, thinking that we can't participate in the miracle is a really good way for Satan to take advantage and convince us to do nothing. And many of us in the church, in our day-to-day lives, we do nothing simply because we think we can't make a difference. And I want to examine that thought a little more, the idea that we can't make a difference. But I also want to take a look this morning at what missions really is. I want to talk about what missions really is, where missions starts, and the foundational that each and every one of you have in reaching the world. And the answer may surprise you. Money has nothing to do with it. Let's look at what missions is. Let's look at what I call God's greatest hits. The first one on the list, the Great Commission. Matthew 28:18-20 says, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I'm with you always, even until the end of the age. Now, you might think this is Christianity 101. Darren, this is the basics. Everybody knows this. Well, you know what? They did a survey in a Bible college in Alberta. And I won't tell you the name, but it was Pentecostal. And they did a survey of their first-year students. 6 in 10 did not know the Great Commission. And I look at a congregation like this and I say, you know what? Most of these folks probably do know. Why? Because many of you come from places where you have been the direct result of missions and missionaries going in. And it has changed you, changed your nation, changed your lives, and brought you to another place. Well, I have to say to you, well, you have a debt with the Great Commission, because what is sown into you, you should be sowing out to the world. But for me, the idea here is pretty basic. If Jesus Christ is God and died for me, then there is no sacrifice that I can make greater than the one he already made for me. He has declared that I'm to go and make disciples everywhere, to teach them to obey. And if I'm teaching them to obey, hopefully that means I'm obeying. I'm doing what God is calling me to do in my life. And it doesn't matter what that call is, whether it's sweeping floors or preaching from a pulpit. And he has guaranteed that if we are obeying him, he will be with us in the process. But after the Great Commission comes what I call the Great Clarification in Acts 1, 7-8. He said to them, it's not for you, Jesus speaking, it's not for you to know the time or dates the Father has set by his own authority. But you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes on you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and to the ends of the earth. The passage there is not for you to know the times or the dates about when Jesus is coming, about the end times. Jesus says it in other words, don't worry about when I'm coming back. Some of us get so wrapped up in worrying about when Jesus is coming back that we forget about what we're supposed to be doing today. And so Jesus says, to paraphrase millions of adult drivers throughout the years when their children are traveling with them, Jesus says, I'll get there when I get there. Stop asking how long. Kids, you need to focus on what's going on outside the window. Church, you need to focus on what's going on outside these windows, because otherwise you might miss something. And that something that you miss might be changing a person's entire life and the life for all the generations to follow. This is not in my notes, but Patty and I had something we were reflecting on recently. See, her mother came to Jesus through a witch who had been converted. That witch was brought to Jesus by her son-in-law. So son-in-law to witch, to my wife's mother, to 5 single girls to that single mother, who have been part now of reaching the nations and going across the world for Jesus because of one person. We get so wrapped up in the when, the maybe, and trying to figure out when Jesus comes back that we forget about the command itself. Take your power and be my witnesses. And then Jesus tells us where to witness, locally, nationally, internationally, close by, and then the ends of the earth. You might ask, well, how do I get to the ends of the earth? There are 3 ways. Go yourself, pray your way there, intercede for the nations, stand in the gap for Israel, for Ukraine, yes, and even Russia. Pray your way there, or send people like me. And as to the how, the technique to use for that, we have the great requirement. He has shown you, O mortal, Micah 6:8, what is good and what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. And then comes the last of the greats, the great caveat, the two-handed gospel. See, too often our well-meaning help, our well-meaning evangelism turns into secular charity, and we leave the gospel out of our actions. To quote a rather well-known preacher, our social justice must include proclamation, telling people about Jesus wherever possible. And our proclamation must be salted with the compassion and mercy of social action. Beware of the tendency to be more excited about our good works than we are about the good news. The reconciling gospel is always at the forefront of the church's social action, because a full belly is not better than a reconciled soul. So what's the heart of missions? Not not my will, his. Submission. I will go because he has called me to go. And if I cannot go internationally, I will go nationally. And if I cannot go nationally, I will go locally. And while I go locally, I will reach out to those who are closest by me, my family, my neighbors, my kids' school. And wherever I cannot go myself, I will send others to take my place. And when we send that person, we are sending new seed to a foreign soil and producing a new harvest. Oh, thank you. No one who gives a little child even a cup of water will be without his reward. When Patty and I first got married, It was really interesting. I'm a cook, if you can't tell. Piece of advice for life: never trust a skinny cook. They don't eat their own food. And first few weeks, after we got married, started cooking for the family first few months. And they were really freaked out because, first of all, they couldn't understand this concept that a man would know how to cook. Colombian men are too macho for that. I said, tell me I'm not macho to my face and I'll show you. Joke. But they were fascinated with my rice. They said, Darren, oh, you make such great rice. Darren, this comes out so amazing. Wow, what's your secret? And the funny part is because we have a tendency to do things the same way all the time. And Colombians, when they're making rice, like a lot of places, if they want to add a little extra flavor, they put in some chicken bouillon. I put in beef. But a new ingredient to a new place brought out a different result, something that they'd never experienced before. That new seed to a foreign soil produces a new harvest and many times produces a crop never before seen. See, missions changes a community that cannot change itself because a new viewpoint is added. Not a better viewpoint necessarily, but a new one. And we get new results because of it. But when I will go in humility because I do not have all the answers. And I will go as a servant, but above all, I will go in obedience to the one who sacrificed everything. Like we sang this morning, or like our sister shared this morning when she gave that word. Our entire faith is based on sacrifice, not some Santa Claus God that was going to give us everything. And that sacrifice is the heart of missions, and missions is never accomplished alone. It is always, always, always a team effort. Missions is accomplished through the feet of those who go, the knees of those who pray. The next slide, please, sister. And the hands of those that give. Now, over the last 3 years or so, Patty and I have been privileged to do so much, to build churches in pandemic, feeding hundreds of families, coming alongside a children's home, sharing the gospel to tens of thousands of people in different places. And looking at everything we've done, sometimes I ask myself, how did we get here? I'm just a street kid from East London that came to Jesus. And my wife is one of 5 daughters to a single mother that should have starved to death because she lives in a country with no social services. And we've done some really big things, and it's like, how did we get here? But do you want to know what the difference is between me and you? Do you know what the difference in my reward will be compared to your reward when we get to heaven? If you are doing what God has called you to do, if you're stepping in as the administrator of the church, if you're cleaning the bathrooms, if you're on the board of education because you want to help be an influence for Jesus in this crazy mixed up world, if you're just taking a young boy fishing because he has no father and needs somebody to teach him how to fish, if you're doing it in obedience to Jesus Christ, you know what the difference between your reward is and mine? Absolutely nothing. Your reward and mine are the same. Because God does not care about the size of your endeavor. He cares about the size of your obedience. Let me say that again. God does not care about the size of your endeavor. He cares about the size of your obedience. I like that so much I put it in Spanish. A Dios no le importa el tamaño de tu proyecto o esfuerzo. Le importa el tamaño de tu obediencia. Amen. No, that's not me showing off. I actually speak Spanish. Eso, hermano, predica. He cares about your obedience because when you do your part, however small, the results are up to him. 39 years ago, as a brand new believer, I started by mopping floors in the street mission where I got saved, leaving a worn down building looking rather good. But most times people did not notice my work. It's just something that needed to be done. And that's the way it is in the kingdom. Most times your work will not be noticed, but it needs to be done, and if you don't do it, who will? And then I started opening the door at the missions base and took on more and more responsibility. And some people started taking notice of Bubba, the street kid. And people like you in the church loved me. You gave me compliments. And even when I attended church and maybe didn't dress right, or maybe didn't even, okay, I'm good, smell right, you sat beside me. I had long hair. I had studded wristbands, a lumber jacket, and you put your arm around me. Have you ever put your arm around a grizzly? It takes guts. And sometimes you even took me out to lunch or invited me to youth camp where you volunteered, or even bought me a pair of shoes. A couple that I don't have time to tell the story this morning, but a couple bought me a pair of shoes when I needed them, and they changed my entire life. And then I started helping set up chairs at church, and I felt included. Because this was something that I could do. Me, the reject, the little fat kid that was obscenely bullied his entire childhood, the kid from the broken home. And suddenly I started to feel included. And then you needed help painting. And so many other things, and I began to feel more than just included. Suddenly, in my church, I felt needed. And then you needed help to run the sound, so I volunteered. Now, I had absolutely no idea what I was doing, and it's a miracle from God that I didn't blow up the building. But you were willing to teach me, so I said yes. Because more than just being included, now I was family. And family helps family. Family shows up. Family doesn't run off and leave the rest of the family just because there's been some argument or disagreement over the color of the hymnals. Family sticks around and loves and works it through and comes to understandings because family is family. Family just shows up. It's just part of the deal. And during church events, I saw the resigned face of the pastor as more and more people left the building early as the event was finishing, but there was still so much more cleanup that needed to be done. And I decided right then, seeing my pastor dragging his feet and dragging his heart, saying goodnight to his family that was going to leave without him once again, that I would never go home until my pastor did. In any church function where I was serving, I would stay until the end so that maybe, just maybe, he could have some time at home with his family before they gave up once again and went to bed without him. And there I started to learn empathy and responsibility. Even years later, when I had my own family wanting to go home because they had school the next day, either they stayed with me at the church to help finish, or I found them a ride and kept working, because my pastor has a family too, and I needed to be a godly example to mine. I wanted them to remember my dedication to God and His church so that they would never forget it themselves. Then at the Street Mission, I started a Christmas dinner for the lonely and hurting on Christmas Eve and found out that I could be an example to my community. And I worked 1,000 little tasks around the mission and in my church because you, the people that love me, showed me how. And then came missions. And I learned how to build, but even building, ministering to kids, a simple act of playing with them, changed their hearts. Years later, I would hear the story of one young girl who learned about the Father's love through me and my team because we took time just to play with them. We changed their destiny. I often think about this fatherless generation and the so many older parents and grandparents, seniors, sitting around and, being retired. You know what retired stands for? It's retired. You just get tired and tired more. But you ever seen a little kid that's just done arts and crafts, and he wants to run and show it to his parents because he's so proud or she's so proud of their little creation. Well, imagine those little boys and girls that have nobody to show it to, or a parent that's indifferent. Imagine some of those grandparents that have their kids or grandkids so far away. Instead, we're sitting in the corner of a Sunday school room, don't care if you're in a wheelchair, but just being able to say, wow, Maria, that's amazing. I'm proud of you. When you think God is done with you, you may speak the words into somebody's life that will follow them for the rest of their days and make a change that nobody else could ever make. Later on, we adopted an orphanage, changing the destiny of dozens of more, and we've done so many other things, impacted so many people. And I kept learning. Don't ever stop learning. I learned that by keeping my word in something so simple as obtaining an email address, I could change lives forever. I promised Justin, a short-termer from the U.S., that I would get Jamie's email for him. And fulfilling my promise sparked a long-distance relationship that turned into a marriage, 2 children, and a future career as missionaries, first in the Dominican Republic and now in Colombia. Listening to God, keeping my word, my yes being my yes, my no being no, I changed their destiny. And yet, ourselves in ministry, we continue to look at big things as we start on working on building a church and a Christian school on an enormous plot of land. Even before we had the permits, Pastor Herman cleared the land and turned in the rented space and put up a 250-seat tent on the lot. Because if Israel could do it, if they could meet in a tent in the desert, so can a bunch of Colombians until their promise is ready for them. A 6-acre lot building a church for up to 800 and a Christian school because God has taught us to change destinies trusting in Him. Now we've finished the primary school, and you can see where the 800-seat gymnatorium will go. Looking here, the preschool is now built off to the right, and the high school will be off to the left. Initially for 300 students, but everything has been built so we can double this floor space, add on a second floor. And because Columbia in a lot of places has 2 shifts, they have one set of students in the morning and another in the afternoon, this could potentially become a Christian school for 1,200 students in a place that does not have any Christian school. And that gymnatorium we just saw a second ago, well, come October, New Life Community Church from Brampton, Ontario will be starting on the foundations of that sanctuary. So that money that you've been raising for the team, you can see where it's going and what it will build. And your $9,000 goal, I think you're going to do better. That's a big one. Then we have smaller goals. In the fall of 22, we broke ground on the longest, thinnest piece of land for a church you have ever seen, wedged between 2 other larger buildings. But for 19 years, Pastors Albeiro and Diana have been working to build a church in a tough-to-reach community called Moninquira. That little blue strip is their church. And for years, they only had rented buildings. Then one day, with mortgage in hand, they bought this lot. First, they're meeting in the open air. And then, under this tin roof. And they stayed there for years until the mortgage was paid off. And when we met them, they had just put up a small shed in the back of the lot to store their sound gear and chairs, and were waiting for God to do a miracle. But in the meantime, they didn't just sit and wait with a shovel and pray for God to open up a hole. They started saving and growing their church and serving their community until one day, having saved $5,000, we were able to add another $15,000, enough to get started on a $200,000 project. We had only hoped to get in the foundations and the columns by Christmas of 22. And Pastors Albeiro and Diana, they jumped in still, literally breaking out in blisters while digging their footers through solid rock, volcanic rock, but fulfilling their dream. Again, God does not care about the size of your endeavor. He does not care about the size of your challenge. He cares about the size of your obedience. And because of their obedience, God opened doors. Within months, we had $65,000 come in, unsolicited. And suddenly, Albeiro and Diana had more than a foundation. They had a sanctuary. a 250-seat sanctuary, multi-level, a sanctuary which they soon filled. Even as they pray for their Sunday school to be completed, a goal that we hope to accomplish in the next few months, at the same time as we're working on the Father's house. Coming along amazing servants like these, coming alongside amazing servants like Pastors Maria and Herman from the Father's house, I can be part of changing the destiny of hundreds and thousands of people that will come through their doors in the future. Coming alongside amazing servants like these and the pastoral staff, you can be part of reaching the hundreds and thousands of people that will come through these doors in the next years and decades. In everything I do as a Christian, as a missionary, I change destinies. And I change destinies because people like you changed mine when you loved me. If it weren't for people that loved me, that taught me how to serve, that put up with my mistakes, and some of those mistakes were really big, let me tell you. If it weren't for people forgiving me, for giving me an example to follow, I would not be where I am now. If it were not for people like you that supports us, for churches like this one that support us, we couldn't do everything you've seen on this screen. So what's the heart of missions? You are. You are the heart, the soul, and the future of missions. With the pandemic, so many people stopped coming to church, or they've taken their time to return. They've stopped serving. They've stopped taking their time to get back into motion. It's time for you to become an example to the next generation of Bubbas that you will help out, that will be able to go out and change the world. I need you. Your pastor needs you. Jesus desperately wants you, and the world is waiting for you. I'd like to tell you one more story. I might go over a couple of minutes here because I don't want to pay attention to that alarm and not be able to figure out how to turn it off again. Started with a Sunday school teacher. It was the year 1858 in the city of Boston. Edward Kimball was a young secondary teacher who made it a habit to personally give each student in his class an opportunity to accept Christ as their Savior. He was concerned about one of the students specifically that worked at a shoe store, so one day Kimball visited the young man at the store, and he found him working in the back stocking shelves. Well, in the back of that shoe store, Edward Kimball, the Sunday school teacher, led that young man to Christ. And that man was named Dwight L. Moody. Moody became an international speaker and toured the British Isles. He preached in a little chapel pastored by a young man by the name of Frederick Meyer. In his sermon, he told the story of a Sunday school teacher. That message changed Pastor Meyer's ministry and inspiring him to become an evangelist like Moody. Meyer eventually preached in America in Northfield, Massachusetts, where a young preacher heard him say the following. Pay attention. If you're not willing to give up everything for Christ, are you willing to be made willing? That remark led J. Wilbert Chapman to respond to God's call in his life. And Wilbert Chapman went on to become an effective evangelist. He enlisted the help of an ex-baseball player by the name of Billy Sunday for his crusades. And Billy Sunday learned how to preach by watching Chapman. And where Chapman was an effective evangelist, Billy Sunday became a dynamic one. It's always best to work yourself out of a job. I must decrease so that they can increase. Billy Sunday's preaching brought thousands to Christ. Inspired by a Billy Graham crusade in Charlotte, North Carolina, a group of Christian men dedicated themselves to reaching their city. They invited an evangelist by the name of Mordecai Ham to come and hold a series of evangelistic meetings. The year was 1932. A local farmer loaded up his pickup truck. He did his ministry. He was obedient to what God had called him to do. And he loaded up his pickup truck and spent the money and spent the gas and took the time every night to load his pickup truck with neighbors and took them to the meetings. One of those kids that he took was a 16-year-old boy who sat in the crowd every night spellbound by the message. Every night they had a meeting. Every night this farmer loaded up his truck, spent the money on the gas, and took them to the meeting. And each evening the preacher seemed to be shouting and pointing specifically at that young man. Night after night the teenager came, and finally on the last night he went forward and gave his life to Jesus. That teenager was Billy Graham. Billy Graham has communicated the gospel to more people than any other person in history. You probably know someone that was led to Christ by his ministry or by the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association. You probably know people and kids that have been blessed by the shoeboxes that they send around the world through Samaritan's Purse, the disaster relief. And it all started with a Sunday school teacher by the name of Edward Kimball, who cared for the souls of his students to personally make sure they knew and understood the gospel of Jesus Christ. God does not care about the size of your endeavor. He cares about the size of your obedience. Over the next few months, our obedience will look like this: reaching out to needy kids, building housing for them, building churches, handing out Bibles door to door, and praying for those same homes. You have your obedience. What will it look like? Where will you serve? When will you serve? Your family needs you, and there are people waiting to hear the answer to that question. This deep sense of responsibility gives me clarity that there's someone waiting for me on the other side of my obedience. God bless you. Stay up here, okay? Yeah.